Somewhere, far beyond the dead-end sign, yet not far from the reach of modern civilization, deep in these mountains lies a secret lost to time. I'm Vincent Rains, and welcome back to Next Exit. So while this isn't my first time showing this hidden valley on the channel, I wanted to take the time to actually showcase the abandoned community beneath the peaks of Willard and Pikes Mountain. Back in December, my cousin had asked me to take him up into these mountains where much of our family lived for almost a century. And while here, I figured it best to document everything possible before it's completely lost to time. We're going to start this journey with a rather steep hike to an almost forgotten cemetery containing a few family members, most notably that of my great-grandfather, Bill King. You can see him pictured here on the right, alongside his brother-in-law, Matt Overby, on the left. And here are just a few other more distant relatives, Thomas and Nancy Overby. We're about to cross one of multiple creeks on this journey, and this cabin was the most recently abandoned, actually, just up until the last 20 years or so. And here, as I've shown before, is the site of a centuries-old Indian camp, where my dad used to find artifacts as a kid, never knowing what they would be worth today. Now, something that you can't really pick up on in the video is just how quiet it becomes when you venture into these woods. And while there are signs of animals around, you almost never see one. In fact, the only animal we saw this day was this blue heron in the creek. But aside from the stories of ghosts and cryptids that I've mentioned in this hollow before, sometimes truth is far more disturbing than legend. And many folks in the area will tell you this is the reason the village was abandoned in the first place. As we walk along this long-forgotten stretch of road, we're headed to the first of the more eerie sites on our journey, a location and story I've told on the channel before of a man named Jim Pack, the second most evil man in the valley.
Is this the first house we were talking about?
Yeah. This is one of the spookiest ones. So this is the house. This was Jim Pack. This is the one who's, he tried to kill my grandpa. His boy drank Red Devil Lye to kill himself. Sent him to the mental hospital.
He didn't want to go back home to his daddy, so he hung himself while he was there. Ain't no telling when this thing was lived in last. I know. Like I said, it looks like it was just yesterday.
So as you can see by this Jeep, this isn't quite as long abandoned as some of the places we'll see today. This was actually used as a hunting cabin until maybe 20 years ago or so, but I don't believe it's actually been lived in for maybe twice as long, yet looks as though someone just left it within the last couple years. I know no one has been here, or at least messed with the house for at least 2 years, because the green chairs are in the exact place they were the last time I was here.
Yeah, this is my grandpa's old car. And apparently it just broke down, so they just left it here and stripped it. And we come up here one time and someone had put a deer skull up on it.
Now where my grandpa's car sits was about as far up as anyone could drive, even back then. From here, it's all on foot, which as you'll see, was and is still no easy task. And beyond this point is where most of the community once stood.
It's probably right around the turn of the century, maybe 1920s.
So what you just saw was the old potato cellar, and here we're approaching the remains of my great-grandma Emma's old house. She was the wife of Bill and sister of Matt from the picture earlier. And here is a picture of Emma. Now the house seen in this picture is actually still standing a few miles away. The house that we're coming up to now unfortunately burned down years ago. Now I'm not sure when this house was built, but I know it was lived in until the early 1950s, as my dad spent the first few years of his life in it, along with my grandparents, of course. And aside from the potential old cryptids still lurking around, one thing you really have to watch out for in these mountains are the hundreds of small cave openings dotting the hillsides. And an interesting formation here is the small natural land bridge formed from the old creek tunneling through the soft earth. Now, as we're crossing the next ridge over from my grandparents' old home, we were searching for another cemetery I'd found years ago, but this turned out to be futile because, as you can see, the small, old, weathered gravestones would be nearly impossible to find in this dense wood. We're now approaching the old home of my great-great-uncle Sid, seen here playing the guitar alongside my grandpa as a boy. Now, this house was lived in until the late 1950s or early 1960s, but as you'll see, is still in nearly the same condition as it was then, some 60 years later. In fact, the main reason they even left this hollow was because he and his wife had 7 surviving children and simply ran out of room, even after being one of the largest houses in this cove. While it's lasted over 60 years abandoned, I truly hope time will continue to be kind to this relic for generations to come. Now, while I've stated my views on the paranormal on this channel before, there's no doubt that there is a different air about our final location of the day. After traveling to nearly the end of the cove, we're approaching the ruins of the home of a truly wicked man, my cousin's great-great-grandpa, John Willard. If Jim Pack was the second most evil man in the valley, this man was without a doubt the first. From putting out his first wife's eyes, to chaining his children to the bed and locking them all in the cellar. He would even spread flour around the house to make sure no one entered and no one left while he was away, even for days at a time. And according to my cousin, he had recently even heard that he would bury his newborn babies alive on the sides of the road, on more than one occasion. As my dad put it, when the man finally died, no one batted an eye. And for whatever reason, right about the time John Willard died was about the same time everyone up and left this valley. I'm unsure if a fire claimed this house as well, but like many of the former houses in the mountain, all that really remains is the chimney with a few old artifacts strewn about. And just in case you were wondering, yes, all of these houses did in fact have electricity. A few even had TVs before their abandonment. But as daylight was quickly leaving us this early December day, we figured it best to make our way back to civilization. You know, for safety reasons, of course. But I would like to mention that all of these grounds are on private property, which we were given permission to hike this day. As these are truly sacred lands to my family, I would like to keep this land as private and undisturbed as possible, so hopefully our future generations of kin can explore them as well. Thank you all for joining me again today, and I'll see you all at the next exit.